Are we ready to
Yes,
go?
sir, we're on.
Okay. All right. So we have, yeah, about 40 or 40, 45 people, 38 people, 40, closing 40. Okay. Very good evening to all of you. I hope you can hear me. Uh, there's no way I can figure out whether you can or you can't, so I'm just going to go with that. Uh, Lovely to be back once again within the TASI fraternity. Took us a little time to get around to doing this, uh, but it's great to kick off a session with a young and dynamic speaker, Rohan Chakravarti today. And for those of you who are not TASI members, I'm going to take like just 5-10 seconds to introduce the Animation Society of India to you. This is a non-profit society. It's a registered trust with the Charities Commissioner of Mumbai. And our aim and objectives are basically spreading awareness about the art and craft of animation, visual media, anything to do with the, visual communication, so to say, including design, science, technology, behind the scenes, you name it. So we are not limited to the mode or medium of animation only, and which is why you will find that there are a lot of speakers in our events who may or may not be connected to the stream of animation or to the field of animation. Uh, One such speaker we have for you today, which Prasenjit Ganguly is going to introduce to you. On our TASI website, there are details that are posted regularly on upcoming events. There is a subscribe button which takes you to a mailing list, which is a confidential mailing list. TASI does not share records with anybody. So you can safely share your email IDs with us, which then go onto our centralized database, and you can keep getting information regarding our events. Of course, those of you who are active with us on Facebook also will know that the Facebook and Instagram handles are also regularly updated with news and happenings and so on and so forth. So we apologize again before we start off this session for this little technical hitch. This is technology for you because we've had 3 rounds of tech checks on 3 separate days. And on every day, we have come out with flying colors only to fall flat today. So we really don't know, why we are not able to get onto Facebook live streaming at this point in time. But I guess during the course of this presentation or during the course of the session, we'll keep trying to see whether we can somehow fix that and go live on Facebook as promised. But till then, there is enough space here for participants to come in. So, which is why we've also posted a message. So, if anybody out of you is getting messages on your private WhatsApp groups that you can't get onto the meeting, just direct them to the Zoom meeting. The login ID and password has been posted both on the website as well as on the Facebook page. So they should have no issues on coming on to the Zoom account. For which I must take a moment, and on behalf of the society, we must sincerely thank Whistling Woods, Chaitanya, who is also with us today. Chaitanya Chinchikar, he's vice president at Whistling Woods and is a committee member and has always been a very staunch supporter and a generous supporter of TASI and its activities. And they have, very graciously given us access to their licensed Zoom account, which is allowing us to take in more than 100 people, and for a duration which is beyond the stipulated free duration that you get. So a big shout out to Whistling Woods on behalf of TASI. Thank you for this, and we look forward to more such sessions courtesy of you all. We are already eaten in about 20 minutes into the session time, so we don't want to keep all of you waiting. Those of you who have joined us, welcome once again. And with that short announcement, anybody who wants to send in questions, uh, as a participant, you should be addressing those questions directly to Vaibhav Kumaresh. Vaibhav ji will be taking those questions and moderating those questions. Once we are up on Facebook, we will send a message out there also. There will be somebody, Devang ji, who is moderating the Facebook page. So hopefully we'll try and get that session going live as well. So PJ, as Prasenjit Ganguly is fondly addressed, All yours. Please do us the honors of introducing our speaker for today. And once again, Rohan, welcome. Over to you guys.
Yes, very, very good evening, everybody. First of all, I hope wherever you guys are, you are in good health, top health, and you're taking good care of yourselves and people around you. Tough times, difficult times, so please do make sure that you're keeping your spirits high. And going in the same flow of things, we did not let anything come between our way and interactions with all you fans of animation, visual arts, and allied subjects around the country. So, warm welcome to all of you for taking the effort to come in here. Apologies for the little bit of a delay caused. Technically, these happen, but that's how we go about. Now, let's get to the point fast and quick. It's an absolute pleasure today, guys, to have Rohan Chakravarti with us. I have been stalking him for a while and looking at the absolutely awesome work that he comes out with. So today we have him with us, and myself also being a big fan of nature and the environment around us, we can completely relate to the kind of effort that goes into the work that he creates. So it's an absolute delight having him over here. Now, you know, Rohan deals with two extremely unique subjects. One is of beauty, the other is a challenge. The beauty part is about the environment, about the awe that the environment leaves us with, leaves us in. The kind of things that happen around us, the kind of things we do to it, the kind of helplessness we feel, the kind of thoughts that come to our mind that I wish we could do something about it. And the second part, which I think is a very, very critical and yet extremely difficult aspect of life as such, that Rohan tackles with absolute mastery, is the difficult, serious business of humor. Okay, it's absolutely a wonder looking at the kind of sense of humor that he infuses into subjects that are extremely, extremely critical for the survival of us as a species and the planet as a whole. So absolute honor and delight, Rohan, to have you on board. Before we get into the work that you do, into the life that you've been leading so far, I have one little question for you, Rohan, to get started. Okay, and let's see if I can phrase it well for you. Now, the work that you come out with is infused with a lot of study, a lot of research, and primarily there's a lot of humor, like green humor is supposed to be. So anybody is having a low day, you check into greenhumor.com, or you just open up one of your new posts and you are guaranteed a smile on your face and a thought in your head. So what I'm concerned about, knowing from you, the horse's mouth directly, is Rohan Chakravarti a funny person by nature, or has he inculcated this ability to generate humor? If so, how?
My friends will tell you that I am the most boring person they've ever met. They call me a grumpy old man. So yeah, I'm nothing like my cartoons, Prasenjit, and I'm really sorry to disappoint you.
So is it the armadillo factor that comes in here?
The pangolin, yes.
The pangolin, yeah, the pangolin factor, right? Okay, great. Right, yeah. What is also amusing is that you kind of have this uncanny ability to hit a very difficult point, very hard, straightforward, and to the point, supported by the art that you bring it in. In fact, just today, I was looking at one of your cartoons in which you have I think it's a reticulated barbet and a woodpecker sitting next to each other, a red-throated woodpecker talking to each other. And it was beautiful to note that within one little glimpse and with very minimal use of visual elements, both these species were very, very clearly identifiable about who they were and where they belonged. And yet you did not miss out on the simplicity of the factor. So it's beautiful to look at that at the same time. So Rohan, without
thanks a lot for analyzing that.
Right. So it's fantastic to see that work, and we would love to know how you came up to doing what you're doing right now. So what I would do is, as I leave it up to you to present your work and share it with our audiences here. In between, I'm going to come in and poke you and probably have a word or two with you, and you can resume from there onwards. Okay. So all over to you, Rohan. So looking forward.
Thanks a lot, Prasenjit. Thanks for a very elaborate and flattering introduction. Thank you for the caricature that you've done for me. It's probably my first caricature ever.
Pleasure.
By another person. This is a real honor for me because I have during my formative years, when I was studying animation myself, I have looked up to Vaibhav's work a lot, and he's been an inspiration throughout. And to be invited to this forum by a person like him is a huge honor. And I would just like to begin with a disclaimer that I am a failed animator addressing the Animation Society of India. So please do not make the mistake of taking me seriously. All right. Now I'm going to share my screen and begin my slideshow.
Sure.
Okay, I hope. Is my home screen visible to everyone? My slideshow screen? Prasenjit, is this appearing full screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks once again to the Animation Society of India for thinking of me worthy enough to do their first online session, and I'm really honored to be here. This is a question that I get asked every time I'm trying to describe to people what I do for a living. Is that even a job profile? So I've made this the very title of my talk. I'm a wildlife cartoonist. My cartoons deal with the issues of wildlife conservation and nature conservation. And I'm on the request of Vaibhav, Tony sir, and Prasenjit, I have put together a slideshow that depicts my journey in the last 10 years of being a professional cartoonist, what I have learned through this journey, the ups and downs of this journey, and the various challenges that I have faced, and try to share my knowledge with anybody who's trying to make some kind of foothold in professional cartooning in India today. So here goes. Now, if I ask you to guess which is the oldest career in art that humanity has ever pursued, you may not be able to guess right that it is wildlife art, because the first paintings that we ever did as a race have been cave paintings, and some of them are as close as 40,000 years old. Just to mention that my slideshow is full of cartoons, and I'll just leave the audience to read them for a bit as and when they appear. And this is an art form that is not alien to India. It has taken wing in India. It has flourished in India across successive generations. Case in point, Ustad Mansoor, who was a prolific Mughal miniature painter in the court of Jahangir, and he was one of the founding artists of Mughal miniature wildlife art. So yeah, this is something that India is not unfamiliar with at all, wildlife art as a career. But unfortunately, down the line, we have lost that disconnect with nature. Now, if I ask you to identify these two set of people, I'm sure you will be able to guess them right. Even these two, for that matter. But if I ask you to identify this, I know you'll tell me it's a dragonfly, but that's not the answer I'm looking for. I'm looking for the specifics of the species. And I'm sure a lot of you may not be able to come up with that. And that is unfortunate to me, because our lives depend on this, the third entity presented here, a lot more directly than the first two. And why is that? Because now this dragonfly is called the globe skimmer. It's the longest migrating insect in the world. It travels all the way from the northern latitudes near Japan to the tropics in India, which is about 5,000, 6,000 kilometers. And that's a world record in itself. And why is this creature important to our lives? Is because it eats mosquitoes. It comes to India around the monsoons and it preys on mosquitoes. So it is directly responsible for your and my healthy life, which Priyanka Chopra is not, which Narendra Modi is not. And this is my grouse with the way information and news is presented and consumed in India. And that is something I try to change with my work. There are several careers in wildlife art that can be pursued today. Fine art, photography, taxidermy, not so popular in India, but still is a very valuable art form. Illustration, graphic design, animation, of course. What I do is cartoons and comics, and I'm going to tell you more in the course of this talk about that. Why is there a need for humor in conservation communication? Because I think we have a crisis in hand, and for once, both man and tiger agree. The end is very near. What we are going through is described as the Anthropocene, or human-induced, the human-induced age of extinction. So this is a big crisis, and in a time like this, conservation communication in creative ways becomes all the more important. three ways in which I believe my work works, or wildlife cartoons in general work, is to deliver a message of conservation without being preachy, is to simplify jargon for the layman, and to instill a love, respect, and curiosity for nature in my readers. This is a cartoon on orangutans and palm oil. I'm sure all of you are aware of the kind of destruction palm oil has caused in Southeast Asia, and it is entering India in a big way. Just an example to illustrate how cartoons can simplify scientific jargon. If I tell you that the mammary glands of an elephant are located in the pectoroaxillary region, which is more or less the same place where the human mammary gland is located, you may or may not remember this fact after you leave this talk. But if I show you this cartoon, I am pretty certain you are going to remember this for the rest of your lives. So this is one way I think cartoons work, by simplifying the information in a manner in which the reader is able to both retain and respond to it. A bit about me, I hail from a city called Nagpur, bang in the middle of India. I call it India's belly button, and it's one of the richest cities in terms of wildlife and natural heritage still. And I get all these creatures that are shown on my screen in the surroundings of my home. And I've been very lucky to grow in a place that is so rich in biodiversity. And thanks to my parents for subscribing to Cartoon Network for me at an early age, I have had inspirations like Hanna-Barbera, Genndy Tartakovsky, and SWAT Kats to grow up with. And that has been a great source of inspiration and motivation for what I do today. But despite all this, me being from a small town, I was not able to give my life the direction I wanted it to have early in my life. And I went astray. I did not know better to do with my life than to join the rat race, because art was not really a viable career option from where I come. So I happened to enroll for a dentistry course. And in the middle of the course, I realized that the job stank. I'm not making fun of dentistry per se. It's a very noble profession. It's just not for weak-hearted people like me who faint at the sight of blood coming out of an extracted tooth. So later in my journey, I met my first wild tigress in a place called Nagzira, which is a tiger reserve now, very close to my hometown. And as you know, the feline female gaze is magical, and it always makes men do stupid things. And that's what prompted me to give up a stable career option and nosedive into art. So yeah, this is what I did after seeing the tigress, put on a cape and set about drawing cartoons. A bit of a career timeline in brief. I started Green Humor back in 2010, right after giving up dentistry. And that was when I couldn't even afford shaving cream. In 2011, animation was my next go-to. I was very fascinated with animation and I wanted to be an animator. I used that 1 year to, for self-teaching. I enrolled for a lot of online tutorials. Sean Cohen's work really influenced me, who was the storyboard artist for SpongeBob SquarePants. A lot of the tutorials I attended were by him. And of course, I read Richard Williams' animation toolkit and trained myself. Secured a job in a film studio called 4C Multimedia in Bangalore. And all this while, I was also moonlighting as a cartoonist, trying to give Green Humor some kind of shape. And by 2012, it had started to find columns with various magazines like Savers, Sanctuary Asia, even Tinkle Digest. And my work won its first award, which was the Sanctuary Asia Young Naturalist Award. In 2013, a big moment came in my career when the Universal Press Syndicate, the same syndicate that syndicates Calvin and Hobbes, Dilbert, Pearls Before Swine, all these great print comics, picked my series for online syndication. By then, print syndication had almost been defunct, so they picked my series for online syndication. And that's when newspapers in India started to notice my work. And I got my first newspaper column with an edition of The Hindu called Blink. In 2014, I did my first solo exhibition, and thankfully the exhibition turned out to be a success, which gave me some kind of financial footing to take the risk of quitting my day job and becoming a full-time cartoonist. In 2015, I got my second newspaper column with Sunday Midday. This allowed me to tackle longer narratives, because the Sunday comic format is a much longer format than the usual comic strip. The usual comic strip has 3 to 4 panels. I get 7 to 8 panels on a Sunday format. So this has allowed me to tackle much longer narratives and much more complex issues through my comics, and which resulted in a greater readership for my work. In 17, I won 2 awards, the WWF International President's Award and the Royal Bank of Scotland Earth Heroes, which propelled my work to further notice. In 18, I got my 3rd newspaper column with The Hindu, the main paper, and I also authored my first book, The Great Indian Nature Trail, which was published by WWF India. It's a comic book on Indian wildlife. In 19, I did my 2nd book, an illustrated book on birds called Bird Business, published by the BNHS. And in 20, when I can finally afford shaving cream, I've forgotten how to shave. This is some of my snippets as animation designer for 4C Multimedia for 3 years of my career, 2011 to 14. And this is something that defines my work. The title Green Humor. It's a collection of cartoons and illustrations on wildlife and nature conservation and all things green. I'm just going to leave you to read some of my cartoons for now. As we all know, the elephant is our national heritage animal, and it's not doing very well in India, an India that is rapidly urbanizing and concretizing, and elephants across their range face several threats like railway lines and unplanned development through their habitats. This bird, the Great Indian Bustard, was slated to be our national bird, but it lost out to the peacock. And today it's one of our most endangered birds, well on its way to being the first extinct bird in independent India. And it faced several threats like development through its range, the lack of conservation of grasslands in India, which is its prime habitat. This ongoing pandemic has unraveled several links between the environment and our well-being. As you might know, the pandemic itself is a cause of environmental destruction and hunting of various wild animals, one of which happens to be a pangolin, which has been proven to be a carrier of a strain of COVID. We've been going through a lot of environmental and socio-political intersections in India of late, and one of the main issues has been the draft environment impact assessment of our environment ministry, about which I've been doing various cartoons. And this has, the whole issue has taken shape in the form of an online movement led by creative communicators and artists. So these were some of my cartoons that you can explore more on my website, and also on my with my print columns. These are some of my current publishers of my cartoon columns. Go Comics has a page called Green Humor on its website. There's Midday that comes every Sunday. Hindu, the main paper, publishes me every Sunday. Blink publishes me fortnightly on Saturdays. Round Glass is an e-magazine that has a weekly column by me. Save Us has a bi-monthly column by me. And there's a Turkish kids magazine that I work with, which has a bi-monthly column as well. Some of the major commissioning organizations that have had the honor to work with have been WWF, BirdLife International, the Save Our Seas Foundation, BNHS, and various forest departments in India. I've also worked on a couple of books. Something to Chew On is a book on food and food history and the environment aspects of food, done by Kalp Fritz, which I have worked on as a cartoonist. I've done several kids books on wildlife with Pratham Books. And this one here is my first comic book that I have authored and illustrated along with Bijal Vacharajani, The Great Indian Nature Trail, published by WWF India. And my latest release, which was published last year by BNHS, is Bird Business. It's a collection of 100 illustrations on bird behavior of bird species found in India. All my books are available on Amazon, and you can go through them there.
Right. Rohan, just to bring on that book part once again, it's fascinating to look at those books. So could you share a little bit about how the idea of now moving on from panels of a comic strip or a comic book to going on and having a compiled edition as a book came to you, and how did you go about it?
Well, Bird Business, I'm actually going to talk about the whole process, Prasenjit later.
Okay, great. Absolutely fine.
Yeah.
Sure.
So in this whole journey, I've learned one thing prominently is to trust your gut and not your career counselor, because I did happen to go to a career counselor once, and she thought that because of my aptitude for art, maybe orthodontics was a better field of work for me, designing braces. So it's an art in itself, yes. But that's what she suggested to me. And just 1 year down the line, that same career counselor hired me to do cartoons for her firm. And that gave me, I think career counselors really don't have any idea about about guiding your guts. So that's one piece of advice I can give you accurately, to trust your gut and not your career counselor. So who's a cartoonist after all? A cartoonist, in my opinion, is an artist who, while attaining the skin of a 32-year-old, which is me, has successfully retained the maturity and the drawing skills of a 6-year-old, which is also me. There are some prerequisites for being in my line of work. This is not something that, people say that a cartoonist is born, not made. And I think indeed he's born, because you have to be born really sick in the head to be able to derive sadistic pleasure from offending people. You have to have an obsession for mischief mongering, which I'm sure all of you animators do already. A love for anarchy. A cartoonist is never a leftist or a rightist, he's totally a sadist. Good grammar, no matter which language you're working in, and good observation, often to the point of being a creep, especially when you're drawing cartoons on wildlife. You really have to observe your subjects. And so these are some of the prerequisites for being a cartoonist. What is the market for cartoonists like today? In my opinion, I think the average demand from various platforms available to cartoonists, I've listed out here. So magazines are a very popular platform for cartoonists, but the demand is slightly average. Newspapers, the demand is declining, which is very bad news for me, because I have idolized people in the print media, and that's who I've aspired to be. That's where I've aspired to be. And print media is on a rapid decline worldwide. Then there's syndication. The print syndication side is as good as dead. So I don't think there have been any new print syndicated comics since 2012. That was the last print syndicated comic strip I know of, which is Boomo. On the web though, syndication has been emerging, and you can tie up with various syndicates that run various advertisements on their websites, and you can earn a revenue out of shared ad money. Cartoons are also commissioned by organizations and corporates, for example, on platforms like newsletters, campaigns, social media advertising, and visual copywriting. And this demand has been rising. So if you are an emerging cartoonist, this mode of work is to sustain your interest. It can be a very important go-to mode of pitching. Merchandise, the demand is rising, and you can have your own line of merchandise if you're a cartoonist. And of course, individual online patronage on platforms like Patreon. I still haven't exploited this medium, but I see that a lot of youngsters are on it and making very good use of it. So yeah, this is what the transition from print to web looks like to me. Earlier, the greatest pleasure of seeing your work in print was to sniff it, right? And if you put your wet nose on a laptop or a mobile, you're likely to get a shock.
Right.
These are some of the chief differences between print and web that I have experienced. I'm still more for print, being old school, but if you can adapt to the web, nothing like it. I have found that my interaction with readers through the print medium has been a lot more meaningful rather than the web, because I think readers who read your work in the print are genuinely interested in analyzing your work and making something out of it, while the audience on the web usually responds with one-liners, memes, or emojis, and a lot of trolling. So yeah, I don't think I've adapted to the web as well as youngsters have. The print, although has several disadvantages, one of them is limited income and reach, whereas the limit to income and reach on the web is the same as the limit to stupidity on it. If you can exploit the right avenues, there's no stopping you from being a star on the web. The print's advantage has been editing and constructive criticism from editors, which lacks on the web because you are your own editor, and this is why stick figures pass off as cartoons these days. To me, the print is the golden bygone era because all the cartoonists I've grown up admiring were print cartoonists, and they made a career out of publishing their work in newspapers. Whereas the web, to me personally, is the dystopian future, which I still am fully to understand. But the biggest advantage of the web is the lack of censorship, which allows me to publish stuff like this. No, I know no newspaper that would carry this kind of work, which I had to ultimately publish on the web. So yeah, there's a lack of censorship allows you much greater freedom to express yourself on the internet.
At the cost of a few trolls, you must agree to that, right?
Of course. This is what the transition looks like in one image. To the left is a young person, a young cartoonist, and to the right is me. There are some emerging avenues on the web for cartoonists, which I must tell you of. Online syndication, like I already mentioned. GoComics is one, Webtoons is another. I think Webtoons is faring a lot better than GoComics because GoComics is owned by a print syndicate. And I think they do not understand the web as well as other platforms do. There are online merchandising platforms like Redbubble, which I print and ship with. Society6 and Etsy are also very good platforms. You can also print and ship your own merchandise if you have the resources to do so. An artist I know well called Alicia Souza, who I'm sure a lot of you must be following. She's very popular and she has been creating her own line of merchandise. There are e-magazines. I publish with Roundglass Sustain, but there are many other e-magazines depending on what kind of work you do as a cartoonist that you can exploit. Some examples are Yahoo, Rediff, and Sifi. Social media accounts of big brands. Based on what your work tackles as a cartoonist, you can approach big brands and pitch your portfolio to them. And of course, individual patronage platforms like Patreon. This is very important. An iPad and a tablet do not make a cartoonist, which is a trap that many youngsters fall into. You have to go the long way and the long route. So a lot of the founding principles of animation are the same as the founding principles of cartooning, and a career in animation has really helped me understand the art behind cartooning. So, the basic steps are the same: learning anatomy, figure drawing and gestures, perspectives, framing, lighting, color theory, etc. So I've just listed out some references for beginners here, which if you are interested in making some kind of foothold in cartooning, you can just go through. Christopher Hart has done a lot of books that break down the principles of character design for cartoons and how to begin to draw your own comic strips. Preston Blair has done legendary books on cartoon animation. Andrew Loomis on figure drawing. There's this favorite book of mine called Framing Ink by Marcos Matthew Mester. He has really broken down the very basics of lights, camera, and perspective in storytelling. And this applies to all kinds of art forms, be it cinema, be it storyboarding and pre-production for animation, or comics and cartoons. Then I've done a short introduction to my work, which is wildlife cartooning in particular, which you can access on Roundglass Sustain on this link. If you want, I'll later send this link on chat so that everybody can access it. One of the most important things to me in preparing the foundation for my work has been keeping a journal, because you never know when an idea strikes as a cartoonist. So, if there's a direct observation of a wild animal, which is usually my subjects, I make a journal entry, which later results in a cartoon idea. If there's something interesting I come across in a textbook or a magazine or any read literature, I make a journal entry, which later could be a cartoon. Most of my professional discussions happen with scientists, with people in conservation and ecology, which again are entered in my journal, which may or may not give rise to new cartoons and comics tomorrow. Please read the classics before you draw your classics. So I follow a simple rule of having read at least 50 cartoons for every single one I draw. So that's a kind of reading that should go into doing your own cartoons. And some of the masters that have inspired me have been Bill Watterson, Patrick McDonnell. The New Yorker is a great source of cartoons, and it's accessible online for free. So please make use of it. Gary Larson has been a favorite cartoonist of mine whose series The Far Side is immensely popular and is probably the world's most widely syndicated series. And of course, R.K. Lakshman from India, who made the intersection between social issues and politics in his work like nobody else. Here are some additional tips for emerging cartoonists. Learning the art of brevity and editing. This is something that comes with years and years of experience. My experience with animation and editing films has helped me learn the art of brevity and editing, which I apply to cartoons today. Grammar, whichever language, language is no bar, but whichever language you're working in, please make your grammar strong. Don't brew your characters. Colloquial is good, contemporary is good, but distasteful is bad. And I think growing your characters is terrible. Don't brew me, is what I mean. Tagging a cartoonist in all your work is not going to make your work noticed. It's only the strength of your content that will go that way. So please focus on bettering the quality of your work rather than spamming people. And yes, please learn to punctuate properly. It's a skill that is disappearing from the coming generations. I don't know why, but it's really important in writing cartoons. A few tips on how to develop your portfolio is, of course, these are based on my own experiences. Your point of view may differ, but this is what I think. Individuality in writing, humor, and visual style is what publishers look at today. And if your work is not identifiable as unique, a publisher is less likely to go for your work. You must display the ability to tackle diverse themes. They can be social issues, they can be political issues, they can be, in my case, my subjects range from wildlife biology to wildlife politics and conservation politics. So it's a very wide spectrum, even within the universe of wildlife and biology. Diversity in humor. You must demonstrate the ability to tackle different kinds of humor. It can be goofy, it can be slapstick, it can be silent, and it can be sharp. So if you display a diversity in humor, your work becomes a lot more interesting for a publisher. Contemporaneity, the ability to stay relevant and current and relatable to maybe people much younger than yourselves. This is something I really struggle with, and this is something I really have to do a lot of homework to make sure that my work is contemporaneous. And please seek critique from colleagues and seniors and never from your mother, because it's just going to be one-sided praise. And I think I owe my muse a responsibility from my work, because I make money out of wildlife, so I owe some kind of responsibility and responsible communication that results in some betterment for my muse. And I think this applies to any kind of cartooning. How to pitch to clients, organizations, or publishers. How I have gone about, I'm just going to enlist in a few steps. Originality in idea. Please do not base your work on the work of somebody else. That's not what a publisher is looking for. You have to display some kind of command over subject. So this is where research and homework plays a huge part. Please have a single home for your portfolio on the web. I'm not talking about social media profiles. I'm talking about a proper website. There are several free platforms available to create your own website, like Wix, WordPress, Blogger. Mine is on Blogger. It's a very amateur platform, but it works. The point of this exercise is to have all your work in one single place for any publisher to look at, and not to direct him to various social media channels or Behance portfolios. That makes a huge difference. You must display some kind of regularity and frequency in publishing. It could be weekly, or whichever works based on how much time you have. Have some kind of an overview of market demand and prices before you pitch a fee or a quote to your client. You must demonstrate the ability to conceive projects and take them through. The project idea, the very basis of an illustrated project, should be able to come out of your brain. And yes, no work in progresses, please. Nobody's interested in looking at how you go about creating your masterpiece. I have noticed that being a little more than a cartoonist or even an animator has gone a long way in honing my art. And you know, I've been a cinephile all my life, and I've been a comics collector all my life. So I think the exposure to these art forms has helped me understand my art better. So some random sources of inspiration for me have been cinema, books and literature, experiences as film studio odd job chap. I was at a film studio doing animation design, but in my free time, I would sit in the edit room and understand how the process of editing works. I would stand in as a voiceover artist just to, you know, to have the experience of how voiceovers work and how timing and pacing works in editing and the making of film. Animation, of course, has played a huge role in what I do today. Comics collection, as I already mentioned. I also have the habit of collecting comics in foreign languages that I don't understand, because I believe that the visual medium transcends the limitations of language, and I enjoy reading comics that in foreign languages just to see how much of an impact art is having on me as a reader. Then music, of course, I'm a hobby singer, and that always helps me get rid of creative blocks. And of course, fashion magazines that I read waiting at the parlor for my mother when she had her haircuts. How exactly has this helped me? I'll tell you. I've done a lot of fashion is not something I understand. Okay, I dress up really shabbily, but I have been able to do cartoons on fashion like this because I have read fashion magazines as a child. Why I call this second-hand fashion is because hermit crabs take the shells of other creatures, other marine creatures,
Right.
like prawns and snails. They are born without their shells, so they must occupy other shells to protect their bodies. Here are some influences of cinema and animation on my work, and I hope this will answer Prasenjit's question. This is a scene from a Korean cult classic called Old Boy. I'm not sure how many of you have watched this, but it's been a very influential film for me, and it's a very path-breaking piece of cinema. And here's a scene from my book Bird Business, which is directly inspired by this scene. Genndy Tartakovsky's Samurai Jack has been something I absolutely adore and worship, and that has inspired. This scene has inspired the very cover of my book Bird Business. Just the whole juxtaposition of Aku and Samurai Jack, applied in parallel to the eagle hunting a jungle fowl. Of course, the influence of cinema keeps showing up in my work on and off every now and then. I love the cinema of Satyajit Ray, and this is a cartoon paying tribute to him, where manta rays and marine rays are screening a Satyajit Ray film underwater.
The entire Ray family.
Right. I've also developed an alternative line of illustrations, combining whatever I've learned as a pre-production artist in animation with wildlife science. So that's resulted in what I call wildlife caricatures. So these are a set of wildcats found in India and some frogs that are endemic to the Western Ghats. Here's a bit about my process. I'm sure all of you animators are very familiar with breaking characters down to shapes and creating your own characters, creating expressions, gestures, making your characters act, learning the rules of framing, how to draw backgrounds and how to juxtapose characters with backgrounds, and of course, the final colored cartoon that you see. I use Photoshop mostly from all my published work and a bit of Adobe Illustrator. This is what the process of doing wildlife caricatures looks like. And trust me, it looks far easier than what it actually is. It begins with shapes, then fleshing out your character, then drawing over those shapes on a digital software like Photoshop, and then even creating your own textured brushes to give it a certain texture and feel.
Right.
I've managed to take this series of illustration a bit beyond just drawing beautiful animals. I've done campaign mascots for several conservation campaigns. The one on the left is one of the largest hornbills found in the world in South Africa, called the Mabula ground hornbill. And it serves as a mascot for a BirdLife International project in South Africa. Closer home, for a tiger reserve called Kanha, which is home to a deer called the Barasingha. It's endemic to Kanha and it's not found anywhere else in the world. And the forest officer, the regional forest officer of Kanha, then had the vision to overlook the tiger and pick this deer as the face of the park. And that's what we did with Bhusing the Barasingha. And this mascot became so popular that today it is a UPSC entrance question. I'm not joking.
Wonderful.
I also do a series of maps where I depict what kind of wildlife is found in a given region. And these are the various steps that I follow for doing such a detailed illustration. It comes, sorry, Prasanita, you
Yeah, Rohan. Yeah, just going back to the previous slide that you just shown, which is of drawings of these beautiful animals in a style which is slightly different from the usual cartoon style that you apply when you're doing a strip, cartoon strip or something like that. So has this drawing style evolved, or its illustration style evolved over a period of time, or has there been anything that has led you to this?
It has evolved, yes. I think I've been noticing a lot of changes as and when I've been growing with passing years, and I think the process of evolution is constant and it's unstoppable. It's not something you can do much about. And
so, have there been any influences that you have taken in the positive direction with these?
Yes, many. So again, I also have a section in which I speak about how my work has evolved over the years.
Wonderful, wonderful. Sure.
So these are the steps I take for doing my maps. Nothing can replace first-hand information gathering and first-hand experiences. So I make it a point to visit the place I'm drawing, even if it's for a brief period, and then comes illustrating all the elements within it after studying the place. Then you do the topographic outlines, marking the topographic and geographical details. Then you add all these various elements, hundreds of elements to the composite illustration, add the terrain landscape research.
Rohan? Sorry, can you zoom into the one of the maps?
It's in the next slide.
Okay.
Yeah,
sure, thank you.
Then you add on the terrain and landscape details, and then comes the text, which forms as the basis of the interaction between your reader and your art. So this illustration that I just showed you became a map for WWF Hong Kong, which depicts all the country parks within the island and what kind of wildlife is found there. I've done a similar map for India, which took me a whole year to gather information based on discussions from various friends who are wildlife biologists and scientists. What animals are found where, what kind of habitat do they depend on, and assimilate all that information into this one composite map, which is available for sale on my website.
This is a stunning piece of work, Rohan. Like every time I look at it on your website, also, it's almost like it just draws you in. I mean, just to look at this, could you briefly let us know how much time or what kind of a process you followed to get through a map of this kind?
Well, like I said, it involves field visits to various places just to understand what they look like. So I've been to the Northeast. I know what forests there look like, what rainforests in India look like, the Western Ghats, of course. I still haven't been to the desert, so I had to rely on a lot of information from scientists, and of course documentaries, and studying a lot of research work by various people, and all that. You've got to visualize all of that, right? So looking at photographs, looking at encyclopedias, that's very helpful. And my
Rohan, zoom in, please. इतना कलाकारी है ना गजब का. थोड़ा निहारने दो.
Okay, yeah. Well, this is working. So my brother happens to be a wildlife biologist, and because of him, I have biologist friends.
उनका acknowledgement list में तो पहला नाम आना चाहिए फिर.
बिल्कुल.
Right.
So yeah, this illustration is a product of lengthy discussions with a lot of scientists.
Right. Can we have another level of zoom in, Rohan, for this one? This deserves it. This is like there's so much in there.
I'm sorry, I'm not being able to zoom beyond.
Okay.
Just scroll up and down. कुछ भी करो.
So it gives you the details of tiger reserves and national parks, along with what kind of wildlife to expect in which part of the country.
Right. Absolutely.
So, from the snow leopard in the north to our blue whale in the Indian Ocean.
So Rohan, is this just like a static map, or is it on your website like an interactive map? Like you can click on any area and it...
No, sir, this particular map is not interactive, but I am working on more interactive maps with various organizations in the coming months.
Lovely.
Yeah, because that would be really awesome if you could kind of like click on a particular area and it opens up with a little video of the place or some, photographs of the sanctuary or whatever is
Right.
it gives you a little up close and personal view of the.
Exactly. So in
Rohan,
fact,
on the other side of this, that's one side that Tony mentioned about having it interactive. There is something about this visual which is static and does not move. What it does to a viewer probably is just it raises that curiosity to want to know what that fellow does and where is it, what is it doing. It just probably and since that it's not accessible, we can't see it in video. It raises probably a little level of inquiry that let's figure it out.
Prasanjit, actually, that's one of the very reasons why I quit a career in video filmmaking to pursue cartoon, because I believe that, the kind of narratives I write, the kind of work I envision for myself, I want it to make people think. I don't want to spoon feed information to them.
Correct.
So, which I think video tends to do to a certain extent. Of course, it results in a greater interaction, but does it result in a greater response? I don't think so. That results when people sit back and read your work, and I think cartoons go a longer way than video in to ensure that respect.
Right.
So a bit about how my work, I think, has evolved through the years. This is one of my, I'm usually a very harsh critic of my work, but I tend to like pieces that have the right amount of balance between humor and science in them. So this is one such piece which tells you about the migration of the world's longest migrating bird, the Arctic tern. It migrates all the way from the North Pole to the South Pole, from where polar bears live to where penguins live, And I think this is the only creature on the planet that has met both these animals. So this is what maybe a behind the scenes of the migration would look like. And like I mentioned, in 2015, I got my first Sunday column. So that gave me a chance to tackle more complex narratives like this one here. This was my opening strip with my first Sunday column, the one in Sunday Midday. And this tackled the issue of coral bleaching, which is not just happening in the Great Barrier Reef and in coral reefs around the world, but also in India, in places like Lakshadweep and the Andaman Islands, and even off the west coast. So coral bleaching is a very real problem. And this is something that our entire food chain depends on, because all our fish comes from coral reefs, and this is something that we do not realize sitting here. So this is one direction in which my work has evolved. The longer format has given me a chance to make my approach more socially oriented, more politically oriented, and go beyond just the fun side of watching wildlife. This was my first international assignment, which took my work outside of India, the wildlife map of Bhutan. Although it was a baby step, it was a very important baby step for me, because my illustration also evolved with this project. Why I say this is because...
when was this, Rohan? When was this?
This was in 2016.
Right.
A year after I did the India map, I did this. And as you can see here, it's not just wildlife. It's a lot about folk heritage. It's a lot about architecture and a lot about how these things merge. The whole view of, Buddhist compassion with animals merges with conservation in Bhutan. Bhutan, despite its size as one of the world's smallest countries, has 70% of its area under forest cover. And that is something that it practices constitutionally, and that is a huge lesson for a country like India. So this is what we've tried to depict with this map, how people in Bhutan coexist and celebrate wildlife. This was a project commissioned by WWF in Bhutan.
Do you get these posters in different sizes, Rohan, or is it one available size for print?
The ones I have done for my own portfolio are available in various sizes, but the commissioned ones are copyright of the commissioning organizations.
Right.
So again, this propelled a lot of curiosity for my work, because this was launched by the then Prime Minister Shering Tobgay, and that was something huge for an artist like me. And over the course of these many years, my work has taken many different kinds of shapes. For example, this particular map that I've done for the city of Gangtok for an organization called ICLEI I took a few extra steps to ensure that this is done in a way that is locally resonant. So Gangtok has a Thangka art school. Thangka is an art
Yes,
form,
art style,
a
yeah.
Buddhist Himalayan art form. I spent a lot of time in that Thangka art school interacting with artists and teachers and learning just the very basics of Thangka art and how I can modify some of my elements to look like the elements in Buddhist paintings. And that's what I've tried to do with this map.
The clouds.
Sorry?
The clouds.
Yeah, the clouds, and also the way I've illustrated some of the animals, some of the, elaborating some of the corners and introducing illustrated patterns from Thangka art into my work. I hope I have managed to make this, locally relevant and locally resonant.
Zoom, please. Let's
See,
take a closer look.
yes, sir, yes. Can't zoom in beyond this,
Yeah, that's good.
but I have a closer view of the elements, some of the elements here.
Wow, there are kiwi fruits in one section.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
So the depictions range all the way from wildlife to indigenous life, local livelihoods, local ways of celebrating different festivals, etc. And of course, architecture.
So all these elements that you have drawn over here are specific to that art form.
It's kind of a hybrid between Thangka and my work. I won't make the mistake of calling it Thangka because it's not that.
So is there anything specifically that you could like point a finger at and say that this is a very strong signature of that art form?
So the patterns that you see, sir, in my animals, for example, if you observe this one, the blue whistling thrush,
Right.
It's got patterns that these Buddhist painters used to depict gods and even landscapes. For example, the clouds that I've done, the trees that I've done here, the hills that I've done here are very reminiscent of the backgrounds that you see in Thangka paintings.
Mm-hmm.
So how do cartoons make a difference? In my opinion, cartoons make a multi-pronged difference on who you are targeting. To give you an example, I just want you to quickly read this comic. Now this comic, which I've done, was published in Go Comics, which is an American comic syndicate, and a reader from Peru wrote to me saying that he was considering buying this monkey as a pet, and he refrained from doing so after reading my work. So for me to sit here in India, publish a cartoon in the US and save the life of a monkey in Brazil, or in Peru, sorry, was a huge thing, and that is the power of the media today, social media and various kinds of forms of communication coming together. And the difference you can make with a simple art form is very huge. How does cartooning affect politics? So in India right now, we are going through a very paradoxical situation in a sense that there is very good science happening, but very bad governance. To give you an example, this is a comic strip about a recent development in wildlife science from India, very close to my hometown, in Pench National Park. The pangolin had been radio collared for the first time in the world, radio tagged, sorry, for the first time in the world. And this is a huge, huge development for a country like ours because conservation biology has been led by Western countries for several decades. And to make this kind of a benchmark in India is a huge thing. But this is not being supplemented by good governance. And that's because our leaders do not understand the science behind conservation. So you have heard of the draft EIA, you have heard of the various kinds of clearances that the government has been issuing industries. One of them is to carry out exploratory drilling without any environment clearance in both onshore and offshore in India. And that's quite abysmal for a country like ours, which has believed in coexistence almost culturally. It is among our core values that is being compromised on for the sake of unplanned development. And with my work, I hope that there will come a day when politics will actively engage with science, because that kind of information will be reachable to them. How do cartoons affect my readers? This again is an example of how I have managed to make a small tangible impact on the lives of my readers. A lot of female readers wrote to me saying that they were not aware of some of the eco-friendly sanitary products that are available in India. And this comic helped them make that switch. I know nothing about menstruation, being a man, and for women to confide in me after reading my work in this manner was a huge thing. So I'm sure if I can make a small difference like this, people who are senior and much more talented than me can go a much longer way. And of course, cartoons make a difference to cartoonists themselves, which is, I think, the first and foremost job to creatively satisfy an artist. It is a means of expression and communication after all. It is an emotional outlet. It releases dopamine, which is the same effect as falling in love. And imagine experiencing that every single day. You don't need to think of any alternative career that has worked for you. It's an immense source of personal pleasure and creative satisfaction. And of course, it makes you a babe magnet. I'm kidding. I'm not very successful on that front, but I hope to have some success here.
What's your wife got to say about that?
She's in the other room. The talk is not accessible.
We have you on record, my friend. Don't worry. You're streaming live on YouTube.
Just a cartoon about why I like cartoons to conclude with. And I will sign the talk off on that note and open the floor for questions. Thanks, everyone.
Fantastic, Rohan. Fantastic. Thank you so very much. This has been a lovely journey for all of us so far, going through the way you work. This has been fantastic. Rohan, by the you have a huge fan following on Instagram, on Facebook, wherever you go to. और आज भी यहीं पे भी हैं बहुत सारे. So questions के तो I think there's been a huge landslide of questions which I had my own, but I don't think I'll be able to manage those. So I first address the questions that have come in from the viewers of your session. So I think I'll just have one question of my own, which I've always wondered, and I thought I should ask you before I get into the audience's questions. Yeah. You just mentioned about how the political systems, how governance plays a very prominent role, because they'll be the decision-making bodies. And they will be, while there can be fantastic thoughts and ideas, but there needs to be the implementation of those ideas, without which the movement is a setback. So have you had an instance where the work that you've done, while it has influenced so many people personally or as individuals or as a society, have you received any kind of a positive, even and a hint of something positive from the governance, from any kind of a small body of governance? Is it a corporation or if it's a municipality? Have you received anything like that where they say that, come, let's do something together?
Right. So I think personally, my association with the various forest departments that I've worked with is, I think, a small way of having ensured that, because before good creative communication existed in this country, forest departments were unable to engage with various scientists and take their work out to an audience, and just to communicate what is happening in India to an audience that has not had access to forests and has not had access to conservation developments. So I think my association with forest departments has kind of ensured that, has made people more aware of what wildlife sanctuaries are all about, what wildlife conservation in India is all about through art. And it's not just me who's doing it, it's, various other creative writers, journalists have been doing this as well. So I don't mean to take credit for it, but yeah, a creative form of communication like cartoons has indeed gone a long way in ensuring better engagement between people and conservation. As far as politics is concerned, I think what we are seeing today, the whole movement around the draft EIA and the shape it has taken, it has happened at a time where we cannot go out and protest on the streets because of the pandemic, and this is something the government has taken advantage of. They have tried to, pass a lot of decisions online or through Zoom meetings and whatnot. And but we as a community of communicators have ensured that the draft EIA is not overlooked. we've made the right kind of noise, and this has been going on all the way since May, when the issue
May, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and it has resulted in a movement that is 17 lakh strong, and solely on the basis of creative communication. So I think uh, you will see instances like these in future.
Right. Fantastic, Rohan. The other thing that I'm very curious about is children. That is one zone which I'm very close to, and that's again a personal question to you. What do you think the role that I know you are a 6-year-old by heart and by pencil, so we would all love to remain that. I think anybody who's got a flavor of animation in their lives would always want to remain there, right? So do you think there is a way, a manageable, productive way, practical way to be more concerned about that awareness in a much stronger level than just reading up a line in a book, that this can be made a part of growing up and education in schools? Can something be formulated with the help of environmentalists like you?
I won't call myself an environmentalist or even an activist. I'm just a cartoonist doing my job. But yeah, I think it's also the onus is also on people like us to seek more active engagement with publishers, with people who do children's literature, and take our communication to children to engage with them. So I have actively been thinking about various projects that I can do with children in mind, and a lot of these maps that I have been doing are consumed by children living around forests, and that results in not just better engagement with what's around them, but also gives them a sense of pride and ownership of that place. And ultimately, conservation in India is in the hands of indigenous people, and to educate children from that background will go a long way in ensuring a greener future for this country. One of my recent work has been on snakebite awareness for children. It's a comic book published by Pratham Books. It's called Making Friends with Snakes, but from a Distance. So that's targeted at children who live around fields, who are from farming families, and who are in constant contact with snakes. So it tries to break down the science of snakebite management and snakebite awareness better for them. So I think projects like these will go a long way in ensuring better connection between young readers and the environment.
Fantastic, Rohan. Thank you so much for your efforts, and I'm sure a lot of things will go ahead in this direction. So now, running on to the audience's questions. The first one comes from Shaunak, Shao iPad, I think it is Shaunak, and he says he wants to know, there was an article on the release of hand-reared Himalayan cheerbirds into the wild. Okay. He is waiting on a comic on the same, and that's a request from him to you. He would love to. There's Shaunak. There he is.
Hi,
on your screen.
Shaunak, I'm sorry, I'm not aware of this news. I'll have to read it first and then analyze it as a cartoonist. So.
Right. So Shaunak, your message has been delivered to Rohan, and he's going to read up, and I'm sure we can look forward to an upcoming cartoon from Rohan on this. Okay, Rohan, I'll move on to the next question, which comes from Shloka Narayanan, which is pretty interesting. And Shloka Narayanan wants to know, do cartoonists have drawer's block or burnout? If you do, what do you do to overcome it? The drawer's block.
Absolutely. I experience it every day. And what I do is there's no fixed protocol, in my opinion, to break it. But I think after a while, it becomes a part of your life. And I think you enjoy having that block because it challenges you to, take new steps. And in that process, your art also grows. So what I have learned because of constant creative blocks is to spend more time with my pets, to sing more, is to cook more. Because, ultimately all that ensures that you kind of get back to work with greater flow and rhythm. So yeah, I think...
Sakshi is one. Who's the other one?
Sakshi and Srishti. They're my pets.
Srishti, right. Yeah. Sakshi. How are they doing? They're doing good?
They are doing very well. Thank you.
Fantastic. Okay. So good question, Shloka. So now the next one is coming from Gokul. Okay. And Gokul wants to know, this is interesting. While making comics, have you ever been told by the publishers that this comic is way too political, or did they try to influence or modify your stories in any way?
So far, my publishers have been very kind, and hi Gokul. Thank you for the question. My publishers have been very kind, and I have I have been given a lot of creative freedom in writing my own narratives and drawing my own comics. Problems arise when I take censorship too lightly and use certain words or images in my work that are overtly suggestive. And I think that's when I'm told to modify or kind of tone down my work. And that's not something that I regret, because ultimately it's about striking a balance between your art and the message that you're putting out to your reader. And I think, any kind of art form, be it cartoons, be it illustration, is about solving a problem, right? At the end of the day. And it's about how you solve that problem, right? So yeah, this is something, the editorial process is something that enriches you, in my opinion. So yeah, I don't have any regrets on that front.
Okay, so Gokul, I hope you've had your question answered. So yeah, right. Okay, so this is another one which is coming from directly from Tasi Online to me, which is, I think, from Tony G. The question is there anything that is out of bounds, something that you wouldn't make fun of?
I think tribal religion is not something I would be very keen on making fun of, because from where I come from and the way I see conservation, it goes hand in hand with a greater, larger cause. So I would refrain from touching that subject in my work.
Okay, so this is because I have the privilege of being able to switch on and switch off people. So I'm just going to like button in just a rejoinder. I was quite intrigued by one slide in your show, which said, which was about the drilling aspect, where you you were showing the swordfish with a very
snide remark on our prime minister.
That's right, snide remark. I have a kind of a, it's not like a negative view on this, but I just feel that, and I don't know whether you agree with it, just a different perspective. When you get so overtly in your face with people that are in power and they really can't see their own, own hands in front of their faces, do you think that it's a very wise policy to be rubbing in these kind of things into their face? Because yes, it makes for good copy. It makes for startling shock appeal, and it makes for people to wake up and say, "Wow, you've gone and shown it to them like it should be." But at the same time, people in power have very fragile egos, very big egos and fragile egos. So, do you think that by toning down, not necessarily kind of muting it down, but toning it down, or maybe turning the message around into what is your end objective, that action should be taken?
Right.
So instead of saying that, should I be drilling your head, if the comment could have been a little more towards not pointing a finger at them or insulting them, but more asking for a call to action. Do you think that as an activist that would have a better appeal? I personally feel it would, because I don't know, I'd like to hear what your views on that are.
So again, narrative is something I experiment with. This is not just one kind of work you will see in my portfolio. This is, there are several other comics that focus more on what can be done and focus more on, trying to engage politics with citizens and with science. So this is just one instance of where I may appear, say, unconditionally angry, and I think it's good to have various kinds of voices, a bit of diversity in your narrative, and it's good to spice your art up with different kinds of writing. So that's the point of view where I come from. And I also think, sir, it's in the given political era, the time to mince words, the time to hold back a certain emotional angle to your art is gone. I think we are a little too late for that, because, this is a regime that refuses to listen. And after a while, after you've done banging your heads, you have to do something extra, something, I wouldn't say revolutionary, but something that inspires evolution. So, that's just a small thing I'm trying to do with making my art a little bolder than what it used to be.
Right, Rohan, we'll move on to the next question, which comes from Uchuman, if I pronounced your name correctly, Uchuman. in your opinion, what skills and ideas differentiate between a professional cartoonist and a novice cartoonist?
Well, like I said, no stick figures and no broing
Stick
your
figures.
characters. Focusing on having your work on some kind of a credible platform and not just social media, because if you're only publishing on social media, people know that you're your own editor, and just to go through an editorial process is, it's life changing for a cartoonist. You know what the industry expects from you, or reader expects from you, and I think going through some kind of an editorial process is very important in understanding that. So I would urge any novice who wants to be a professional to pitch their work to a professional, credible platform.
Great. Rohan, who are your immediate bouncing boards? Like once you come out with a cartoon idea, who are your immediate bouncing boards? Who do you bounce it off?
Well, my wife is one, my brother is another. My mother.
Are they harsh critics or are they soft on you?
So my mother was a very one-sided, praiser of my work. So she would be somebody who I used to turn for encouragement. My wife and my brother are good critics. They are analysts. So I often depend on their opinion before if I'm doubtful about what I've drawn, I often seek their opinion.
Right. So here is Annie who wants to know, hello sir, I have a question for Rohan, of course. Has the humor in your work ever overshadowed the message? If so, how do you maintain that balance, and any tips on how to do that? Thank you so much for your time. That's from Annie. Annie, there's Annie on your screen.
Thank you, Annie. That's a very tough question. I think it has happened, and I think the other way has also happened when the messaging has taken the front seat and pushed the humor on the back seat. So, of course, maintaining a balance is something I often struggle with because it's a part of my daily routine. And yeah, I think you will see instances where one aspect of the cartoon takes precedence over the other. And this is something where I'm bound to go wrong on and off. So I excuse myself.
Right. So Annie, I hope that answers your question. There is another very interesting one coming to you, Rohan, once again from Gokul. So Gokul, I think, has a whole library of questions for you. So Gokul wants to know, another question along the same lines, while posting cartoons that actively expose the black market or other illegal environmental activities that happen around us, have you ever been warned or threatened by such people who are actually behind them? Oh, Rohan.
I can't give you the details of this because it's come through my editors, but yeah, it has happened twice, and I've been asked to lie low. So yeah, given the current political environment, these things are bound to happen in the country. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah, there was. This is Malvika. Malvika wants to know, what instances of environmental ignorance and destruction cause anger, frustration, or sadness? How do you redirect your emotion towards a humorous approach?
Sorry,
does humor? Yeah. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Repeat the question once again. Sure. So, what instances of environmental ignorance and destruction cause anger, frustration, or sadness? How do you redirect your emotion towards a humorous approach? Does humor dilute, normalize a problem while it helps engage people who normally wouldn't acknowledge these issues? It's a long question, so you can just answer in parts.
It's a very complex question to answer, but I will try to address it from a more personal point of view. So I am somebody who's had issues with anger management in growing up, and so cartooning has been something that has calmed me down, and I would think of cartooning as something that has, made me a better person. So I would like to have the same impact of my art on the people who read my work, and to channelize their anger into something productive after they've read my work. So to something more engaging, like, get them to take my call of action, write that email to the Environment Ministry, go that extra mile to come and show strength to a cause. So yeah, I think my work centers around channeling my own anger into something productive, which later becomes something important for a reader to read. I mean, I hope that's where I'm I'm going with my cartooning. And I hope that answers your question.
Okay, good question, Malvika. Now we have Bhavani Balakrishnan, if I'm pronouncing the name right. Bhavani wants to know, hi, one more question, please. We have seen that you also use your art in other related fields like movies, movie poster in the background. Okay, I think that Kill Bill has taken her attention. Movie posters in the background. Can we see more of your work on other works of art or other socially current topics?
These are just things I do for myself, when I take breaks between assignments. So it's more therapeutic than professional. And yeah, I mean, if I find the time and inclination, I might. I'm a big cinephile. I do a lot of cinema-inspired art. So yeah, I'll make sure that I put out more of it for my readers to see.
Okay, excellent. Rohan, we are kind of done with the audience questions.
Okay, great.
There is one thought that was that I wanted to ask you of your opinion. Like we have these 24-hour news channels which are constantly showcasing, and you know what the news channels are like right now. They are battle zones of the most vulgar kinds.
Yes.
Do you think there is a possibility in time that we could have a 24-hour environment news channel? If so, would it make sense?
Absolutely, Prasanjit. A lot of news channels are news portals, at least online, are dedicating themselves to the environment entirely. Some of these are down to earth from India. There's a Mongabay.com website which has both international and Indian wings and several wings in various countries. So we are living at a time when environmental issues cannot be neglected anymore. Cannot not afford to be on the front page anymore. And I think, an environmental news channel is something that I definitely foresee in the very near future. Of course, it won't be the TRPs that the Republic does, but yes, it is going to be substantial.
It's going to be substantial. Vaibhav Kumresh has a question, and he's going to come on live.
Rohan.
Yes, sir.
Acha, my question is that एक मिनट मेरा video share कर लेता हूँ. Okay, so. Those maps which you've created with the wildlife,
yes, sir.
Where can we buy them? You said that it's available for sale on your website as well. So
I'll send you a copy to begin with, and then.
Array, lovely. No, okay. I'm also asking on behalf of everyone, because it'll be lovely to have a huge one at home. And the other one, very quickly, that finger monkey illustration that you made.
Yeah.
Was it your own initiative, or was it? Did anybody commission it, or it's your own interest that you do something and you learned that it made such a big difference, when you heard from your audience?
So most of my comics that I do are based on, they can either be based on some animal that has caught my fascination, or something that is current that I've read about in a news piece or in an article, or have watched in a documentary, or a creature that I've met myself, right? So there are various things that inspire my work. In this particular instance, I had recently read about a trade bust that had happened, which had revealed an entire stock of captive monkeys. And those were rehabilitated eventually into the forest. And that kind of inspired me to shed more light on this issue, because a lot of these smaller problems that plague very regional areas are neglected by the media. And a lot of people don't realize where exotic pets come from. Even in India, a lot of people buy exotic parrots from Africa, from South America, and this is something that they need to realize, that these species, these animals are coming from rainforests from a certain part of the world. They are being illegally trafficked into other countries to be in your homes. So I hope that work like this will make people aware of the downside of having captive exotic animals. That was one. And I have just typed in the URL of my website on chat, where you can go to the store section, and all my work is available for sale there.
Yeah. Right. Thanks, Ron. Acha, Ron, one very important one. Like, how did this attraction towards nature and wildlife conservation come about? You did mention that your brother is also in the similar field.
That's right.
मतलब बचपन वाली जो कहानी हम लोग प्लान कर रहे थे, वो अभी एक बार आप नटशेल में सुना दीजिए.
So I grew up in a family where wildlife wasn't really, a big way of life. But I had a maternal grandfather. My Nanaji was from a hunting family, and he would discuss wildlife with us whenever we visited him. And he also bought us a lot of encyclopedias as children. So we knew about jaguars and ocelots and mata-matas at the age of 3 and 4. Which a lot of kids don't have access to. So thanks to him, a dormant interest has always been inculcated in wildlife, which was triggered to action much later in our lives when of course, we saw our first tigress together. And my brother and I also started volunteering for an organization called Kids for Tigers, which required us to take school children on bird watching and nature trails. So that also required us to learn ourselves first. And that's when, the whole interest grew. Unfortunately for me, I was already into my dentistry course. My brother, being 4 years younger to me, could use that time to become a biologist. But yeah, I don't have any regrets now that I'm a cartoonist working on wildlife conservation. So yeah, that's how it happened.
One more, now that like the audience is, I'm not getting any new questions from the audience, so मैं quickly ये मौका ले रहा हूँ. Do you have like a regular routine? Like, do you have certain trips that you do annually, or something new every year that you plan for your own growth or your excitement, your curiosity? What is your schedule like?
So most of my travel happens on the maps I work on. These are commissioned by organizations or forest departments, and I get to explore the region I'm drawing in, and that's how most of my wildlife related travel has happened through India. But yes, I also invest in personal travel when I want to explore a new region and want to learn new things. So yeah, travel is a very important part of my life. And unfortunately, I had 2 assignments lined up for Assam and Kerala for the year, which had to be postponed indefinitely because of the pandemic. So I hope those can happen sooner than later. But yeah, sir, I don't think there is any substitute to gathering first-hand experience in any kind of art.
Right. But during the pandemic, like these emergency services are allowed, right? So won't issues related to wildlife come under the emergency services? Like if you're going there, for example, in Assam, there was these floods, and even animals were facing a tough time. So,
so wildlife management, rescue, and conservation is a more immediate service. I don't think wildlife art can be considered one of those as yet.
Cool. Right. I think we've had this very, very mind-opening and vast area to actually look at, and Rohan has shed light on a lot of these issues about how to structure your work, and those have been very, very interesting. Rohan, so what's lying right in front of you ahead? What's coming up for all of us to enjoy and look up to?
I am currently in the process of putting my published comics together as a book and trying to find a publisher for it. And so that's one of the bigger projects in the pipeline. Another is a collaboration with the Sikkim Forest Department. I'm again, learning a bit more of Thangka, because they got notice of my Gangtok assignment and wanted to do something similar for a wildlife sanctuary in Sikkim called Phambonglu, where the red panda is found. So I'm trying to develop that style further into doing another map. And this map will be different from most others because it also explores the folklore of the regional folklore of the place. So it kind of combines wildlife with the mythology of the people.
Very interesting.
Project I'm working on right now, and hopefully you'll see it by next month.
Yeah. So Rohan,
yes.
So Rohan, we have a question on the YouTube channel. So it is from Aparna Bala. How can we make an easy cartoon to inspire others, and some tips?
I'm sorry, I didn't get the question.
Okay. How can we make an easy cartoon to inspire others, and some tips?
An easy cartoon. I'm not sure what that means.
Easy cartoon is oxymoron, or?
Exactly.
But फिर भी some tips.
If you want to start as a cartoonist, you have to draw a lot of circles. Is all I can say. That's drawing shapes is what it all begins with. So what I'll do is I'll just share the link to my tutorial on this portfolio, and maybe that will help the readers to. Let me just find it. Give me a while.
Okay, I think we'll take the last 1 or 2 questions, like last 5 minutes, and then Tony ji, I think we should wind up.
So I just posted a link to a very simple tutorial on wildlife cartooning that I've done, which might answer the last question.
Okay, just as an extension to that question, Rohan, if there, I'm sure there are a lot of students who are tuned in and they are either in the midst of their courses or are doing some animation courses, but maybe, have hopefully some spark has, been ignited. What is your advice to them? I mean, what is the way to go forward into taking this as a formal career? And is this a career? Is this a viable career? Can you make a living out of this? How does one reach that?
So, like I said, cartooning isn't something that you can entirely be taught. It comes with a lot of reading. It comes with a lot of consuming cartoons and understanding, what's ahead of you, what kind of art you want to take up as a cartoonist or even an illustrator, and develop your portfolio accordingly. Is it a viable career? Yes, very much so. But the viability of the career is ensured after many years of struggle. So I have gone through and I'm still going through. So, it's not an easy way ahead. And I think in the beginning, at least when you start off as a cartoonist, you will need to have some kind of supplementary income to make this success later in your journey. Like I retained a day job for 3 years because I could not sustain cartooning alone as a means of living. So I had to work in animation. Although I really enjoyed it, it did grow monotonous in the later years because we were taking a lot of corporate and IT assignments, and that's not always enjoyable. So you have to make certain compromises with your art. You have to do something that is not very enjoyable to you in order to sustain something that is your passion. And even today, I face a lot of dilemmas. For example, I rely a lot on merchandising for my income. And merchandising is not exactly a sustainable means of income because it creates a lot of waste. It creates a lot of pressure on the environment. But as an artist, as somebody who has to sustain, make a living as an artist, I have to rely on something that generates a substantial income. And I think as an artist, you will have to prepare yourself to make certain compromises in your journey.
So how does one get out there? I mean, let's say you start doing your, whatever little cartooning, which obviously has to start as a hobby, not as a, headlong. Like you said, you can't really jump into it headlong and expect to put bread on the table. So how does one get out there? Is social media the way forward? Is, what would you provide as guidance there?
So, speaking from a personal journey, I think social media has been very helpful in getting my work noticed by a wide section of audiences. So, initially my readership used to be mostly biologists and ecologists and people from within the wildlife fraternity. But after social media, and especially after, my Sunday column started, a lot of people who had nothing to do with conservation or science began to read and engage with my work. And I think a platform like Instagram has brought in several people from various walks of life to engage with this particular discourse, and more specifically through cartoons and creative means of communication. So I think social media is also a very good platform to reach an international base of publishers and clients, which is something you can't do relying on other restricted means of outreach within your own country. So yeah, I think it's very important to have some kind of a social media presence, if not a very heavy one.
Okay.
Oh, I have one. अभी और कोई पूछ नहीं रहा था तो एक और क्वेश्चन आया है, बट उससे पहले मैं झट से मैं अपना एक पैतरा मार दूं उसमें. रोहन, one very important thing is what would be our responsibility as artists, like similar fraternity. Could you guide us through certain activities, or could you curate certain events that artists can jump in to have one foot in the environmental sector, where we can also contribute or maybe orient ourselves.
Right.
Those who are interested genuinely, like, could you is there any kind of, start point?
Well, Vaibhav, you're doing a film called Return of the Jungle. I'm not sure if it's released already.
One more year to go.
Okay. So,
that was
I'm
another
sure
thing I was thinking, that we should collaborate. As storytellers, you are an amazing storyteller. You're using a certain medium for your storytelling, and I'm sure these interactions. I'm sure there are so many others in the audience who would have similar thoughts, that we should mix up our strengths again and collaborate on something more meaningful, because
Absolutely.
like the time is ticking, and now is the most important time to act.
Yeah.
Right. So
just for clarity for everybody else, this is when Vaibhavji says we should collaborate. He's not talking about Vaibhavji personally collaborating. He's talking about the fraternity of animators collaborating with somebody like you.
Right.
So, Vaibhav, one of the things that I've noticed have been used very extensively in this this whole the evolution of this discourse is explainer videos, which are often animated, and they've gone a long way to ensure engagement on social media, particularly. So, I think if we can take that as a starting point and build up more on that kind of videography, and introduce more methods to tell a story that really breaks down an issue into simple things and then leads to a call of action. So, I think that's where animators can really come in and change the whole game.
See, I think if you are aware of people who would require films to be made,
Right.
with your experience,
Yeah.
I think there are so many design institutes
Absolutely.
with students who are looking for projects,
Right.
and this would be such a beautiful avenue for students to spend time in, like how you go on recce, on location recce, like you learned Tankha painting just so that you could illustrate a particular regional topic in its regional flavor. So something like that would be so ideal for design students projects. There are 6-month projects which they do as their final degree or diploma projects. So I think something like this, it could really open up the scope for us to collaborate.
Yeah. See, work like this is already happening. I think Srishti takes up an environmental, Srishti Academy in Bangalore takes up an environmental project every year for its animation and design students.
Right.
And I think they've been executing them beautifully. Very recently, an animator I know who's a brilliant talent called Upamanyu Bhattacharya.
Yes.
Wade.
Wade, yes. And
in fact, let me quickly say that sometime from now, Upamanyu and team are going to be presenting their work. In fact, 5 minutes from now, they are going to present. They are up next. So their team is going to present how
It's on a different.
They had
different
premiered
platform though. Yeah, not on the.
I think
platform. It's
last year at Anifest, they were invited to premiere their film. So you mentioned Upamanyu, so please go on.
Upamanyu, other than Wade, he's also done a film for the Wildlife Institute of India, Wildlife Trust of India, on Sundarbans and climate change. So work like this is happening, and I'm sure instances like this will happen more often. Collaborations like this will happen more often, and of course, it is the job of us, the creative community, to seek active collaboration with each other.
Right.
Okay, there's a question from Akash Vardhan. Just PJ, I think, got a little engrossed, so I'm just going to take that.
Yeah.
That Akash Vardhan is asking that to make your cartoon, do you mix both fact and your personal thought to it?
Yes, of course. Although I do refrain from keeping it too strongly opinionated, because I want my reader to form his own opinion after reading my work. So that's the kind of process I follow. It has to be accurate in the science aspect of what I'm presenting, and it has to please me, before it goes out to my reader. So yeah, that's my process.
Are we done with the questions?
I think we are done. We've got one more question coming in once again from Malvika. So we'll keep this as the last question for today, Rohan.
Yes.
Of course, I think we can go on for a very, very long time, but we'll take this as the last one. So here's the question. It says, how can one engage with a section of the population that isn't engaging in art or dialogue in the space of environmental concern, which is the majority of the society, basically?
Lovely question.
By keeping your art wordless. I think whenever I've done wordless art which transcends the boundaries of language, it has gone and resulted in much larger impact. One case in point I can think of is this coloring book I did on elephant conservation for the Wildlife Trust of India. It's called Where's Gaju's Herd, and it's a little journey of a little elephant called Gaju who loses track of his family, and how after navigating through various threats like railway lines, industrial areas, etc., he's reunited with his family. And in that process, a child, no matter from which part of the country he is in, he learns what threats the elephant is facing in our country. And this is a wordless story. And this is something that is interactive in a way that the child is also coloring the story as he's reading it. So I think projects like these, if they're conceived and collaborated upon, can go a long way in engaging people from beyond the boundaries of language.
Okay, right. Thanks for the question, Malvika, once again. And Rohan.
Sir, I have one question just while leaving. मतलब अभी वो mood ऐसा बन रहा है कि. Correct. You mentioned, social media mein, you mentioned Instagram, you mentioned, other channels on social media, you mentioned your website. One of the crazy things that one sees is that all these platforms have got their own various sizes and aspects of images, which they are able to handle.
Right.
So how do you navigate that, territory that obviously something that you make for your website may not be suited to go into a vertical frame, which you would go on Instagram. So does that constrain your thinking that, okay, ab main sirf Instagram ke liye banaunga, or do you make it and then reformat it? How does that work?
Sir, so my trouble is that what I've noticed is different kinds of readers engage with different kinds of social media platforms as far as my work is concerned. So I have a more international readership on my Facebook, I have a more Indian readership on my Instagram, and I have a more intelligent readership on my print media, I would say. So adapting your work into various formats is definitely a waste of time, but I think the quicker you have to figure out a way to do it very quickly and without spending too much time on social media, which I think I managed to do because I generally hate social media interaction and keep away from it.
Who doesn't?
Other than publishing my work. So I think it's a good thing for an artist to focus less on social media and more on the process of creating. And yeah, after you form a pattern of publishing. So what I practice is whatever gets published, I put it on social media. I don't really go an extra mile to engage with the social media audience beyond that. So yeah, that's been my method. Maybe I'll have to change it with the days to come and as print media collapses further. But let's see, that time is yet to come for me, thankfully.
Well, hopefully print media will not collapse. So I mean, so that one can always keep a lookout and enjoy your work in its full glory.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Obviously, what social media does do is that for people who are fast progressing in age, it also becomes a huge aspect for them to be peering into their mobile screens. So always better to have a book in your hand.
Right.
Okay, Rohan, that's what we've got time for. This session, I am sure we can have, and we should definitely engage once again for probably multiple reasons. And we keep doing lots of workshops happen, lots of sessions happen on a regular basis on behalf of TASI. And I'm sure you'll have so many stories to share, so many aspects to throw light on. It's been an amazingly enlightening session, entertaining session. Wonderful to meet you up here. So I would hand over to close the day with Vaibhav, who would offer his word of thanks on behalf of TASI. Vaibhav, all yours.
Thank you, PJ. And Rohan, lovely once again. It was so good. Like PJ said, time कम पड़ रहा है, इतना सारा है देखने के लिए. So I'm sure we'll figure out another way to collaborate. But thank you so much for sharing your journey on behalf of all the audiences on the chat में. बहुत कुछ गप्पे हमने लड़ाए हैं side में, आप पढ़ सकते हैं बाद में. So thanks a lot. Thanks very, very much. And we will be having more speakers coming up in the subsequent weeks. Sorry for the tech goof up today. हम लोगों का बोहनी सेशन था, डिजिटल सेशन, तो हम लोग भी थोड़ा नल्ला लोग हैं.
मैं पहला बलि का बकरा हूं, तो
हाँ, पहला बकरा रोहन था. So anyway, so thank you again. And as Tony G is also saying, spread the word and the recording. And I'm sure we'll try to make it as interactive and as informal as our physical sessions are. So it's very nice to see the people who are able to ask the questions. We still have the bandwidth to take on more audiences, so it's good to see them. Hopefully next time we'll try and unmute you guys so that you can ask the questions directly, if practically, if it works out, because it's more fun and more interactive for the speaker also. So Rohan, thank you once again.
Thank you
very
thank you.
All the best. All the best.
Thanks, Rohan. Thanks for a lovely session.
Keep at it. It's very encouraging to see old people like you getting into this in your fag end of life to finally decide that something needs to be done about the environment. So हम सब जवान लोग आपके साथ हैं. आप आगे बढ़ो.
And if the audience wants to quickly switch on their videos, I'll quickly spotlight everybody one by one.
Yes,
and you can all say idea. Thank you to Rohan. So let him know kaun hai. Wow, everybody switch on your सबको मैं एक एक करके. देवांग जी,
I have unmuted everybody.
This is Kadri Bhai from Gandhinagar.
Thanks. Wonderful.
कादरी भाई पूरा एनवायरनमेंट में एंजॉय कर रहे हैं एकदम.
Alpika.
Hi.
I'm just randomly doing.
Alpika, were you in your car? That seemed like you were doing a session through your car.
I hope Alpika is not driving.
I just got into a car.
Okay,
all this while I was at home listening.
I hope you're not driving.
Okay,
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Argo. Thanks for joining.
Okay, great.
That's Dhruv.
Hi, Dhruv.
Wow. How do we know we are Dhruv, man? I don't believe you. You're not Dhruv.
Virus does not transmit through Zoom. So, yeah.
No, I'm just outside. So.
Hi, Dhruv.
Hello, sir. Thank you, sir, for this wonderful session.
Lovely.
काउंटर चल रहा है. 10 सेकंड के अंदर मास्क पहन लीजिएगा.
There's Anagha.
Hi, Anagha. Thanks for joining us.
Hi.
Gokul, the question man.
Thanks, Gokul, for the questions.
बढ़िया questions है Gokul.
Thank you for this wonderful session. It was really insightful, actually. Like,
अभी देखो हीरो. Calcutta से. क्या बात है. Subro, so nice to see you. Lovely. Who else? अभी कैमरा किसी ने ऑन नहीं किया, नहीं तो मैं दिखाता. Arun, this Arun. Arun, where are you joining us from?
I'm joining from Bangalore. It has been a very good session by Mr. Rohan.
Thank you, sir.
Learned a lot, as well as I told my students also to join the session. So we would definitely like to collaborate and know more about the workshop.
Thank you so much.
Lovely. And there is Praveen from Navi Mumbai.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the amazing session, sir.
So I think we're done for the day. So thank you all once again.
Thank you.
And goodbye. See you all later in our
Stay
next
healthy,
session.
stay safe, everybody. Take care of yourselves.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, Rohan. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Rohan.
See you again soon.
Bye.
Vaibhav ji and all the co-hosts, can I request you to please stay back while others are leaving, just for a quick recap?
Yes. Or we can quit and leave, join again after a bit.
Yes.
Yeah.